Jennifer, thank you very much for taking the time with us today. Appreciate it. Another great year. Let's just talk about, first of all, getting back to another Olympic Games. It's obviously the big thing for all of us. So tell me about the experience in Beijing.
Yeah, going to the Olympics is, well, you think it's a once in a lifetime experience. So to go twice is just unreal. It was definitely a different experience in Beijing compared to Sochi. And in terms of just all the COVID restrictions and not having fans, not having a Canada House, the athletes lounge was, well, much smaller. You didn't really kind of commingle as much as you would have like at a previous game. So that part of the Olympic experience was quite a bit different, but we still got to slide over those Olympic rings and have the maple leaf on our back. And it was a huge privilege.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yes, you always carry the maple leaf very well for us. The team, you play the next two events with the old team. What's that going to be like? Because for you to play with the old team for the last two events.
Yeah, very excited to come and be able to finish the season. We really haven't played a lot since the Olympics or at all. So it's kind of nice to get back on the ice and lots of history with the girls. I mean, Dawn and Caitlin and I have gone through a lot together, and it feels like I can't even remember not curling with them. So excited to have a couple more events. And then obviously Jocelyn and Lisa, lots of great memories there too. So we're going to go out and see what we can do. And the season ends in the middle of May. Until then, well, that's all we're focused on.
Sounds good. So I do like the fact of what you're going forward with, your new team, for lots of reasons. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on, I guess, how it came together, and your thoughts and excitement of going forward with a young crew.
Yeah, when I realized that my team was going to be no longer, I knew Dawn was going to retire, and and Caitlin and Jocelyn are kind of moving on to different things, and Lisa's taking a step back and playing mixed doubles. So when I knew that was happening, I sat back and reflected on what I wanted to do, and I was so excited every time I talked about the potential of playing with Mackenzie Zacharias and her team. So I reached out to them and just wanted to see if there was any interest, and immediately they were just super excited and said all the perfect things. Like they just have the same desire for curling that I do. They have the same determination, the same vision, and they remind me of me when I was their age. But when I talk to them, I don't feel older than them because they've got it together. They know exactly what they want to do. They have a plan. They're amazing people, amazing human beings, and it's a privilege for me to step on the ice with them.
Yeah, I'm interested on your thoughts on kind of the schedule and maybe expectations of when. Because it's a very unusual situation. I'm excited about it, but what do you think going into the year? What are your expectations?
Well, it's interesting. I remember when Caitlin joined the team, people were surprised, and it seemed to work out okay for us. So, but no, I think for us as a new team, we're going to try to play as much as we can early. The girls are more than willing to play lots of events, and we want to try to work out some kinks. But, with any new team, I think you can expect some bumps along the way as you try to figure it out. But the one thing I know about these girls from what I know very early on, and I don't doubt it at all, is that their work ethic is going to be second to none. And they're just going to want to try everything possible in order to be the best. And to be a part of that is almost magical to me. It's like ending my career in a way that I started my career, where everything is magic. And that to me is fantastic.
And you're going to run the team's going to be run with a 5-person squad. Same as you and I have talked a lot about how important that is to you. Do you anticipate how that will run, how you'll manage that?
We haven't figured out all of the logistics of the 5-person team yet, but 2 of the girls are still finishing off their degrees, so that could work out really advantageous if they had some conflicts with school. But we'll definitely get everybody in their alignment. There may be times where I don't play in some events as well, so it's going to be us trying to figure out the best position for everybody, but also allowing us to pursue our dream of curling, and at the same time having some opportunities to maybe have some school or do other things.
That really segues nice into my my next topic, and that's the length of season that we have in curling now. And you're still playing mixed doubles too, so it's not just 4 or 5-person curling or 4-person curling, but also mixed doubles. In the length of the season, how to manage that with life, but also fatigue, all these things.
Yeah, and I think that's why, in my opinion, a 5-person team is a great advantage because the season is so long. Like we really only get 6 weeks off really before, like by the time the season ends, and then you take some time off and then you're training and practicing for the next season, and you're seeing a lot more curling related injuries. I'm very lucky in all of my years of curling. I haven't really had any curling related injuries, but I've curled with teammates who definitely have, and at a very young age. So I think it's something we're going to see more and more of, as we've talked about, and hopefully we can be leading that way, and it'll just give us the opportunity to play as much as we can, but in the same breath, make sure that we don't have fatigue, that we can still be rested, we take care of our bodies and our minds, and be ready to go for the big events.
When it comes to big events, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on the length of the event. The Worlds takes so long, and there's so many games, and mixed doubles over in Geneva will be so many games, and just the events in general seem to get longer and longer, not shorter and shorter. Do you any idea what are your thoughts when you come to events and thinking, can we lick this up a little quicker?
I love to curl, so I would play for weeks on end, and I never get tired. So the length doesn't bother me. I'm hesitant to always have less teams getting into these events, because it is very hard for countries with a lot of depth to qualify for a world championship. So we don't want to be reducing the field, and I'm not a big fan of pools. So
you want to have a full round robin?
Well, in terms of like championships, I just feel like the pools it always happens that they're never equal. And when you're carrying your record forward, it just doesn't seem like the way to determine a champion, in my opinion. So I don't mind the length of the events, as long as the format satisfies why we're having the length of the event.
Okay, and now let's talk about this week here at the Players' Championship with the triple knockout, because once again, it almost sort of went away for a while. The triple. Your thoughts on the triple knockout style of event?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know a lot of the curlers really like it, and I like it as well. It's harder to plan in terms of like if you're trying to do other things while you're playing here, but it definitely is a fair way to play. And I don't mind the pools when we do them at the slams, because we have more pools and you qualify more teams. Like almost half the field will qualify for the playoffs, and then it almost becomes a sudden death after that. So I feel like that format works as well, but I also like the triple. I just think it's harder for fans to maybe pick their matchups that they want to like really come and watch, because you just never know who's going to be playing.
Yeah. So one part of curling these days that's become very important is last own draw.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about it.
Yes. So but I would like to hear your thoughts, and I know it impacted you greatly, but I want to hear your thoughts of the whole sport that way. And of course, with triple knockouts, it's not a thing because it's not part of it. It doesn't matter. So I guess your thoughts on the last own draw becoming so important in our sport, and the differential between round robin and triple knockout or double knockout.
Yeah, and even before the Olympics, I wasn't a big fan of the last own draw eliminating a team from a competition. I'm definitely a proponent of a tiebreaker. And maybe you don't have multiple tiebreakers. If there's like 8 teams qualified for a spot, you can limit it to a certain number of teams. But to have one team eliminated like we were at the Olympics based on last own draw, it just doesn't seem the right thing to do, in my opinion. And I thought that before the Olympics. So It's not just because it impacted us. It's just becoming too much. It's just a skill. It's a skill. It's one skill in curling, and there's lots of skills in curling that you need to have. And for example, like we played Denmark at the last game of the Olympics, and her rock picked in the last stone draw. So there's other things and other factors that can come into play that will impact you so greatly. So it's something that we practice. It's actually something we usually do quite well at. So I should be championing for it, because except at the Olympics, we just didn't have a great last stone draw for some reason, and it impacted us greatly.
Okay, playoff systems. It seems like when you come to an event, the playoff system seems to vary a fair amount. Your thoughts on it? Because I'd love to hear your thoughts, because when I used to come to events back in the day,
yesterday,
just yesterday, yes. You'd come in and you go. You're just coming from one event on Sunday night, and you're coming to the next event maybe the next day, and you have to figure out, well, wait a minute, what are the rules?
Yeah, it's becoming more complicated, I find. I'm a curler, and I didn't even understand what the playoff format was for the Scotties and the Briars this year. Like I couldn't even follow it. Brent and I were talking about it, and we trying to figure it out and how they even came up with the system. So yeah, it would be nice to have a little bit more consistency in format and just try to so even fans know exactly what's going to happen, how the teams are going to advance. But again, like sometimes in Canada, we differ on how we advance teams and rules, and some of those rules I agree with. So I don't know if we need to necessarily change to mimic everything that happens internationally. Like there's some things that it's nice to keep the way we do in Canada, because if we think it's better.
If it's confusing enough where you and Brent are sitting at a table and can't figure it out, and it has to do with curling, that's pretty tough. The women's worlds and men's worlds, they tried the no-tick new trial. So the WCF decided to put in a trial. Now this is going to be studied for the two events, and then the data released and figure out should it go forward or not. We're doing it here at the Slam as well. Thoughts on that idea?
All along, I've said I like the no-tick rule. So I think it should add more offense to the game. But I would actually just say there's no ticks. Like it doesn't have to be on the center line. Just you can't hit a guard for the first few rocks to the end, and just really like even corner guards, you're seeing them chipped into the house and taking really away what the 5-rock rule was supposed to do. So I think it's kind of fun, but it'll be interesting to see, because as rules are implemented, you'll see different strategies, and you'll always see it kind of evolve to a more defensive style. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves, but I definitely think it makes for some more interesting. It did at the Worlds some more interesting 10th and 11th ends. And, if you don't have hammer, you still have a chance. And for the most part right now, if you don't have hammer in an extra end, you're probably not going to win that game.
Right. And it seemed to me that we're watching both at the women's, maybe even more at the men's, where leads were given up with steals. It was remarkable. And is it all because of I don't know. Like it'll be interesting to see the data that comes out of the World Curling Federation in regards to this, because remember you and I talked about the 4 minutes per end and the no extra ends, and this was just the first trial. So we'll see what comes up next, if those other two rules come in or not. I would like to get your opinion on no extra ends, though.
I don't like the other two rules. I thought that no tick was worth trying, just because, obviously I'm a fan of curling as well. And if it goes to extra end and a tick is made, like I turn off the game. Like I don't even watch the end, because you know how it's going to happen for the most part. So I like that rule. But the 4 minutes per end, to me, it just turns into racing curling, like speed curling. And it takes away from the thought process, the strategy that really kind of is true to our game. Like that's what makes our game curling. And there's things that we can evolve to make it more interesting for the fans and make it better for TV, but we also don't want to take away from the integrity of the game. And I think speed curling does that. And then the no extra ends, it's just like a draw to the button. I don't think a game should be decided by last stone draw, or like where you get different points if you don't win the game outright. So that I don't like those rules.
Okay. Period. Last thing, you're playing in the Players Championship. I think you've won it 6 times. Are you going for 7? I think so. Your excitement level when you come to the Grand Slams and to the Players Championship itself.
This is probably my favorite event. I just love it. I think you did too, Kevin. Like it's just. It was the one that the women were always invited to early on, and now we've been invited to all of them, but it was the one that we could come to. So it kind of holds a special place in my heart, where it was kind of the first step for women's curling evolving to that kind of next level. And so to come and to play against the best teams in the world on great ice, and we get to play in Toronto now, which just seems amazing that we've come this far. And I don't know, there's just something special about this Players Championship. I really believe that it was the stepping stone for greatness in women's curling around the world, and to come in to win it is special, very special.
Well, thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
You bet.